Hello, welcome back to Ask a Monk. Today I will be answering a question from the new forum ask.sirimangalo.org, which is our replacement for the Ask a Monk platform. The new forum, one thing I'd like to say for those people who are getting involved in it is two things. First of all, that the content on the forum should be Buddhist. So I'm probably going to do a little bit of moderating, or at least posting notices for questions that are asked or answers that are out of line with the Buddhist teaching. I would prefer that, or I think I'm going to insist that questions and answers both be of a Buddhist nature. So we're not looking for answers from other schools. And the other thing is, I haven't 100% decided this, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to require or limit the questions and answers to Theravada Buddhism, or what is in line with the sort of things that I teach, because Buddhism is, of course, a broad subject. So this isn't meant to be, as far as I've sort of designed it or have it, the concept in my mind is that it's not meant to be a broad-based forum. So there's probably going to be some moderating going on and notifications, because I'd rather, it's not supposed to be so broad. It's just a chance for a group of people who are interested in the things that I teach and practice, and the sort of similar things to what I practice and teach. Not just my students, but people who are into the same sort of things in a fairly narrowly defined circle, to ask and to answer questions. That's my hope anyway, and it might change. So okay, today's question is of interest to me specifically because I happened in the car driving here in California. I'm now back in Moore Park, California. I'll be leaving tomorrow for Canada. To overhear a news bulletin that Stephen Hawking, the renowned theoretical physicist, has said that he's not afraid of death, which is a good thing, but he says that he doesn't believe in rebirth because to him the brain is just a machine, a computer. And he doesn't believe in rebirth. That's just a fairy tale for people who are afraid of the dark. Yeah, that's the quote. So, because I think Stephen Hawking is a very well-known person and very well respected in his field, I thought it would be important to talk about the concept of rebirth. So the question today, is going to be, this is going to be posted as a response to it, so you can read it up there for yourself, is basically in regards to rebirth, but it also touches on the idea of Nibbana or Nirvana. And so I wanted to address both of these topics. The gist of it is that many people will not see a reason for exerting themselves in the meditation practice. Don't see a reason to try and change who they are and to try to work hard to purify their mind. See, the reason being that an impure person can theoretically gain the same sorts of happiness and peace in this life, perhaps even more, and is much more at ease potentially in this life than a person who struggles and strives for some theoretical enlightenment. So the one thing in the question that I really think needs to be addressed is where the person, I assume, identifies themselves as a skeptical materialist, or is referring to people who are skeptical materialists, and the idea that they don't take anything on faith, and therefore these promises of future bliss or future happiness or future enlightenment seem rather shallow. Even the attainment of those things seem meaningless. And the person even talks about suicide. He says, well, wouldn't suicide, he or she says, wouldn't suicide obtain the same result? So, for this reason, I want to talk about the Buddhist understanding of rebirth and a Buddhist understanding of enlightenment and nirvana. First, I've explained my understanding of rebirth in another video. It's a video on the nature of reality. So if you Google that or look up under my videos the nature of reality, you'll get my understanding of what is the Buddhist concept of rebirth. And basically, and this also touches on Stephen Hawking's claim, it's not that we believe in rebirth, it's that we don't believe in death. So when Stephen Hawking says that he doesn't believe in reincarnation or rebirth, that's just a fairy tale, because he sees things from a very empirical point of view. He's actually going against both what a meditator or a person who is studying reality, studying the nature of experience, what they experience. And he's also going against many accepted principles in theoretical physics, or many points that should be accepted. And why they should be accepted is because it was the people who began to study quantum physics who developed these. If you look at the orthodox quantum physics, people like Niels Bohr, Heisenberg, the people who put together the foundations of quantum physics, what they did with quantum physics is came to see that reality isn't an objective state, that three-dimensional or four-dimensional space or space-time is theoretical. It's something that we postulate. We say that this exists. We say that the brain exists. We say that the body exists. But even the brain, as we understand it, is only a grouping of potential states that require consciousness, require our observation. Without our examination of reality, you can't even talk about. This is according to the original orthodox interpretation of quantum physics. You can't even begin to talk about the state of the world around us. So when Stephen Hawking talks about death, we have to ask him, what is the death of what? It's the death of what sort of death is he talking about? He's talking about the death of a theoretical object, something that only exists in the minds of human beings. It's something that we have created as a theory, and we can never prove that it exists. And of course, this is the nature of material science. So, on the other hand, or conversely, what is empirical is the consciousness, is our experience. So when we look at the theoretical world around us, this three-dimensional or four-dimensional space-time, then we can see things dying. We can see the brain falling apart. We can see the body falling apart. We can see something that was working together as a system no longer working together as a system. But all that we're talking about is a theoretical system or theoretical matrix of energy, of electrons and subatomic particles working together and coming together in a sort of a wave and then falling apart again and again and again, and doing this in order. And it's all theoretical. It's something that we have built this science around. But what we experience in reality is the sights and sounds and smells and tastes and feelings and thoughts. we experience things. There is the physical side of experience and there is the mental side of experience. And this continues on incessantly. And it is also governed by natural laws, the laws of cause and effect, for example. So when you, the mental intention to do things, to become something, to change things, to act and to speak and to think, has an effect on what comes next. It creates the next moment. So, and these laws are easily verifiable by anyone who practices, not practices a specific meditation, but one who studies them. If you study the empirical reality in front of you, this experience, right now you're experiencing things. If you study this, you can use this technique that I have been spreading, where you label things as they are. It's not a subjective practice. It's not a religious practice. When you see something, you say to yourself, seeing. So you label it as seeing to straighten your mind in regards to the object, that it is what it is. This is seeing, this is hearing, this is smelling. When you feel pain, you say to yourself, pain, pain, and you know it for what it is. Your mind starts to become clear, your mind starts to straighten, and you're able to see things as they are. If you do this, you'll be able to see cause and effect. You'll see what it is that's causing you suffering, what's causing you happiness. You'll see what's causing you to speak, what's causing you to think, what's causing you to act. You'll see the cause and effect, and you'll see that this is the way things work. So, to say, and this is the catch, this is the main point, to say that at the moment of death there is nothing is really to postulate a violation of the experiential, the laws of experience. That the reality that we are experiencing right here and now, and the laws that are easily verifiable, if not codifiable, because it's not like material science where you can put a number to it, not unless you're really good. Apparently the Buddha was able to put numbers on these things and say how many in this and how many of this, how many of that, followed by this, followed by that. But you can see the way things, the general way things work. To postulate death, to postulate a moment where that stops happening, requires some explanation, and requires a leap of faith, actually. So this is a way of turning the tables on the materialists and saying to them, well, you're not the skeptics, you're the faith believers, you're the believers. You believe in something that is theoretical. You believe in a theoretical death that is somehow influencing reality in a way that is not experiential, that you've never experienced. You don't know anyone else who has experienced. You can't verify it with anyone else, and you can't verify it inside yourself. So there's a belief going on there. You may very well be right. It may be that at the moment of physical death, there is a mental death as well. But that's a violation, it's a violation of the the laws of experiential reality, of cause and effect, because all of the causes at the moment of death then don't have an effect. And so there's something going on there, there's something wrong there, there's something that has to be explained there. Now in Buddhism we only postulate one example of this, or one instance where this is possible, and that is where no more causes are created, where the mind has given up that which causes. And that's what Nirvana is. That's what's so special about this. That's why it's such an important thing. It's like, we're postulating something that requires an explanation, that is an exception. Nirvana is not just something, oh well then you die and that's it. Nirvana is because unless you reach this very special state, death means nothing. There's no end to our experience, to the seeing, the hearing, the smelling, the tasting, the feeling, thinking, to becoming, to wandering on and on and on and on again. And this is experientially verifiable. I mean, there are actually there's a lot of evidence to support this, but the point that I'm trying to make is you don't need that evidence. The evidence of out-of-body experiences, of near-death experiences, of past life memories. You don't. I mean, that's really interesting, and I encourage people to look at that, to say that, oh yeah, there actually is some consistency here. This isn't just a theory, but there's something here that's pointing in that direction. But without any of that evidence, it's the default to assume that that experience continues on, because in order to say that physical death leads to mental death, you have to enter into the theoretical realm of four-dimensional space-time, which it has seen to be dependent on observation because the theory goes that until a scientist performs an experiment, you can't even talk about the result that they're going to get, or you can't even talk about the things that they're experimenting on. It requires the scientist to make a decision which experiment they're going to perform, which basically, in practical terms, means that until there is intention, until there is the focus, the mind which is paying attention to something, you can't even talk about that which it's paying attention to. This is exactly in line with the Buddha's teaching, and this is quantum physics, orthodox quantum physics, the theory. So it's interesting to hear Stephen Hawking talking like this, but it's not surprising, because there are quite a lot of physicists who side with him, and they have many theories that have gone beyond orthodox quantum physics. Now there's even string theory and so on. But the point being that this is all theoretical. The accepted fact is that the only thing that's empirical is our experience, our experimentation, our observations of reality. The rest of it, all of our conclusions and so on, are all theoretical. So I think that should clear some of it up here. But just to the corollary from this, having to do with why one should strive, takes a little bit more explaining. Why one should strive for enlightenment. I think there's at least a little bit of impetus there already. There should be, in the fact that if you don't strive, death isn't going to bring any change. You're going to be the same person that you are now after you die. So, and more so, you're going to be going along the course of cause and effect. So if you're a person who kills, steals, lies, cheats, takes drugs and alcohol, deludes yourself, and so on, guess what? The effects of that are going to become the causes for future effects. It's a chain, and I think this should wake people up to some of the terrible things that we do, and really it really needs to be said, this sort of thing, because it's we're violating it so terribly. We believe that at the moment of death, that's it. Just put it off. It's okay. You can do a little bit of this stuff, these bad things, thinking that in the end we all die. And just sort of rushing towards death. And when you die, you'll find some sort of relief from it. Well, guess what? That's a theory. It's based on belief. It's not sustainable by the facts, and it's not true. It's not the nature of reality. The nature of reality is experience that continues on, and it's based on cause and effect. I mean, it makes so much sense, irregardless of any sort of proof or any sort of any sort of evidence to back it up. It's so easy to see, and it's so easy to understand. And it makes such sense of the universe. Something that was previously so full of questions, why and how and what is the meaning of life and so on, becomes so simple, and suddenly it makes sense. Why are some people rich? Why are some people poor? Why is there suffering in the world, and so on and so on? Suddenly all of these questions of why are we here and why is there the universe suddenly becomes so clear. So from many points of view, it's easy to understand why this might be the case. Why we should practice to better ourselves is for a better future. This is one way of looking at it. But there's something that's much more fundamental a reason for practicing that's much more fundamental that I'd like to explain. And the explanation is that you would use the analogy of a sweater. When we a woolen sweater, when we begin to practice, the reason why we begin to practice is because we have suffering. Right? We have something in our lives that is causing us pain, causing us discomfort. So we start with that, and this is analogous to pulling on the sweater. Because you like the sweater, you think the sweater's fine. It's just this one thread that's causing problems, so you pull on it. And as you pull on the thread, the whole sweater starts to unravel, until finally there's no sweater left. You pull and you pull and you pull, and one thing leads to another, and suddenly it's all gone. Proper practice of the Buddha's teaching is in this way. There is no leap of faith. There is no practice that is out of proportion to the observations or the need to practice. You practice according to the need, according to the pain and the suffering that you have in your lives. The result is to finding more and more and more. One problem leads to another. One realization leads to another. You realize that the cause of suffering is not as simple as you thought. It's not getting rid of the headaches or getting rid of the backaches or the toothaches or getting rid of this you had a problem with a person, a relationship that ended or so on, you lost your job. It's not about just getting your job back, about getting the relationship back, about fixing this or fixing that. Once you start to really see the reasons why you're suffering, you want to practice more and more, and your practice becomes much more a part of your life, because you see that the answers are much more fundamental than you thought. Until finally you realize that there is there's nothing worth clinging to. There is no stable reality in this universe. That brings up another point that I wanted to talk about, the idea of Buddhist practice being suicide and the end of a self. And this is very clearly discussed in the Buddha's teaching. And with a very simple response, that only for a person who postulates a self is there any possibility of suicide or of death of that self. So the reason why we are afraid of enlightenment, we're afraid of nirvana, or we think of it as something like suicide, is because we postulate an existence, a being that exists, a life that is. In Buddhism, we don't do that. In Buddhism, we understand experience to be experience. We don't postulate an experiencer, a being, a self that experiences. I think it may have even been mentioned in your state that in your question, that you don't believe in a self. I'm not sure if it's in there, but someone was talking about how it's only for people who believe in a self, and that's absolutely, I think, a proper thing to say, because without a self, nirvana is not the death of a self, because there was no self to begin with. It's a death of this concept that there was a self. Nirvana is simply the ending of arisings, which each arising is impermanent suffering and non-self. It's something that in and of itself has no existence. It comes and goes. It's something that's instantaneous anyway. Nirvana is simply when this doesn't happen anymore, when there is freedom from all of this phenomena, the arising of things. And that is something that comes naturally. It's something that comes through an understanding of reality and giving up of our attachment to things that are causing us suffering. So I hope this has helped. And I think the reasons why you meditate and read suttas is because you find them wholesome and interesting. That's the best reason to do it. I think any kind of, some people have said in the answers already, any kind of intellectual argument about why you should practice and why you should, or about nirvana and some hypothetical state that you haven't experienced for yourself. Because the other thing about nirvana is the reason why we postulate it is because, the people who have practiced have experienced it. Once you experience it, then you start talking about it. You say, yeah, there's this thing called nirvana, and it's the freedom from suffering. And so then you start to teach this sort of thing because it's because you've experienced it. It's not, we don't start there and say, okay, there's nirvana and I'm going to try to reach it. You start practicing because you have suffering. And once you practice and practice, you eventually reach nirvana, and then you can say for yourself that this is the ultimate freedom from suffering. You've gone along and reduced your suffering until you reach nirvana, and in that moment there is no suffering. When you realize it, you say that's the goal, and you strive for that, and you work harder to obtain that, only because you've realized it, and only because you know for yourself that that's what it is, not out of faith, not because I said it or because the Buddha said it. So practicing just to better yourself is the best reason already. As far as talking about arahants and why arahants won't commit suicide, I can't think of any instance of where an arahant committed suicide. Now there may be one, because it may be that an arahant says to himself, I'm sick and I'm a burden on my friends and so on, therefore I have no reason to live. I don't know that they would actually, I've never heard where an arahant would actually commit suicide, but it may be the case that it's in there, because I'm not, to me what an arahant, what an enlightened being would or wouldn't do is it's up for quite a bit of speculation. So, but mostly an arahant would not commit suicide because they're not interested in it. They don't have any attachments anymore. But as for a person who hasn't become enlightened, they might commit suicide because they still have an attachment and they feel the suffering and they don't want to suffer anymore. They also have the wrong view and wrong idea that by killing themselves somehow they will attain some kind of peace. Now, as I hope I've at least given an interpretation of reality that points out that that's not the case. Now, whether you agree with what I've said or not is totally up to you. And I hope this has helped to give some background and shed some light on a Theravada Buddhist interpretation or Theravada Buddhist explanation of things like rebirth and nirvana, which I think neither requires belief, and certainly the practice of meditation doesn't require belief. It requires a little bit of faith that you're going to gain something out of the practice in the beginning, and then once you start to practice, you gain something. So then your faith was well rewarded and is no longer required. And the more you practice, the more you gain. When you stop gaining, you can stop practicing. If the practice somehow doesn't bring you any good results, then you're obviously bound to stop. And so the only reason people really succeed in the meditation is because they continue to gain benefit. And that's really the wonderful thing about meditation practice and experiential examination and study of reality, is that the more you do it, the more benefit you gain and the more you want to do it. So I hope that helps. This has been an answer to this sort of question, and hopefully to counteract some of the what I would believe to be the wrong understanding that is going to be created by such a famous person's wrong views. So, well, maybe you think I have wrong views, but to each their own. So all the best, and take care.